with a ding. There it is. Alrighty, we should be good to go. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining us for this webinar. My name is Clark. I am a consultant here at CrewTech. I am joined by CJ Pye. He is also a consultant here, and we're both very experienced with AppSheet. Some would say experts, but not me. But we're just going to kind of take you through one of our demo apps that we have. But first, I want to talk a little bit about AppSheet and why you would want to use a no-code app development service like this. The main reason is because learning programming languages and learning how to do custom development can be super challenging for anybody, for young new out of college grads to your older business CEOs and such. It's so many things to learn, so many things that you have to get on the train, get to do with. And there's even though that there's so many new code websites that teach you how to code for free, whatever, it's still a lot to learn. It's still a lot to wrap your head around. And so trusting a no-code platform, like, why would you want to do that? No-code development actually makes it much easier to solve your problems when you're wanting to build an app for your business. You can see AppSheet is agile, it's efficient, it's approachable. These are things that everybody wants in their businesses. My dog is going crazy, sorry. This gives you the means to build your apps quickly and to make changes to them quickly to meet your business needs. It's also incredibly efficient because you don't have to create every piece of user interface, such as working with your margins or making sure that everything lines up right. That just can be a hassle. It can just be a lot on your plate, incredibly time sensitive, or takes so much time to get all those things perfect. And then because you don't have to worry about those custom building boring details that are necessary for full-fledged coding applications, it allows you to focus on more things that are more relevant for your business, such as the actual data or the logic behind your business. The approachability to AppSheet is easy as well because it doesn't require you to learn too many foreign concepts, such as spreadsheet data. If you're really good with spreadsheets, AppSheet is really awesome to get into because it translates so well. It's so easy to go from your spreadsheet data to AppSheet. I would say that there are a few things about relational databases, understanding how one thing in an app affects another, the size of your data, the performance of your app, etc. Because things like this can take a little bit of time to get used to. But from a big picture perspective, it's a really approachable way to build an app for your business. And so for a lot of smaller businesses, or for every business is going to have three things. Okay, you're going to have your business stakeholder. This is going to be your money. This is going to be your funding. It's going to be the people that had an idea and they invested into it. You're also going to have IT and developers for applications and such, actually coding your software, making a website for you. These two people rarely talk in bigger businesses. They don't have as much conversations about what's going on, big picture wise, what's going on from an IT perspective. And then you also have your operations lead. Operations lead is going to be basically your management team. It's going to be the boss of the project. And a lot of times the link between your stakeholder and your IT developers is actually going to be that manager. And so speaking of that, for a smaller business, a lot of times these three things have to be all the same because you may not have as much money as Google or Microsoft in order to have all of these different departments and to put everything together the way that you want it to be. And that's why AppSheet is so nice, is because it makes it so easy for you who are doing all three of those things to easily and effectively create an app that it aids in your day-to-day businesses. And so today's demo, we're actually going to be going over an inventory management app that we actually put together. It has a lot of stuff to it. But we're going to just be focusing on a couple things. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. I will let my man CJ take over the presentation so that he can take you through the demo. Hope you guys enjoy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clark. As Clark said, I'm going to present my screen here and just walk you guys through this inventory app. It's a pretty cool app. I built it, so I'm a little biased, but hopefully everyone agrees with me by the end of it. Are you guys able to see this application okay here on my screen? Can you see it, Clark?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Ricardo and Brian. You guys are clutch there in the chat. I see it. Those yeses. Well, cool. So I'm gonna keep this, relatively short and sweet. Like Clark said, there's actually a lot of complex things going on behind the scenes in this app, and so you feel free to ask questions about that if you want to know something specific. But I'm just going to kind of start with the general functionality of it. And it's just built around the idea of being able to receive items into inventory to step one. Step two is to actually create a composite item. So there are certain products that are built out of smaller components. And so this app kind of allows you to increase your inventory of the built item, the composite item, while also decreasing the inventory numbers of the components that go into it. And it does that all kind of automatically behind the scenes, just from the click of a button. And then once you've created those items, you can add them into batches. Batching is a very common function that's needed in inventory apps. People, they've got batches of honey, they got batches of shoes, they got batches of whatever. It's not just one thing that you're shipping out to your retailers. It's a big group of them. And so this app kind of allows you to add specific items into a batch and prepare it for shipping. And then the last thing is just marking items as shipped to say, hey, it's out of inventory. So that's kind of the flow of I guess, an item in this inventory world. And you can kind of see that laid out across the bottom here on the 5 views that we have. It moves kind of from left to right. And so the first view is just that. It's just kind of a big giant list of the inventory. We've got a bunch of random items in here. And this column right here is the total that we have in stock, so to speak, would be the idea. And there's nothing special to this view. I mean, you can click in, you can see things more specifically about the item if you need to, but it's just meant to be kind of a quick, hey, I want to search for, item 414, and see what's going on there. So that's kind of all there is to that. Where things get a little more interesting is in the second view here called receive. And so this is kind of an interesting way to achieve something called multi-row creation. And so I was working with a client, and essentially their issue was, hey, was that they receive a whole bunch of different items and things into inventory at the same time, right? And so they were saying, is there a better way to add all of these things into our app, add all these rows of data without clicking into the form, hitting that plus button, and going through the form every single time to add a new item? And so this was kind of what we ended up coming up with to ease that process for them. And what it is essentially that same list that we just saw. This is a list of our kind of item master. So these are all the different items that they deal with that they knew that they were going to need, except randomized. And instead of when clicking on it, it actually taking you to the detail, what it does is it adds it to this list on the right. So we've kind of got a left hand, right hand thing going here. where you can select an item, it'll add it to our list, and then we just put a quantity, and then we can just kind of rinse and repeat all the way down the line and choose any items that we're adding into the inventory. So obviously, this data over here is confusing and not um, actually helpful as far as what it says. But just imagine this, being any sort of thing that you're dealing with in your business, any piece of material that you need to track. How many do we have, and where is it? It could be thrown in a list over here. And so once you finish adding all of your items from the left to the right, you hit this button called receive, and what it does is it then adds that quantity that you've selected for each item into your inventory, right? And so I'll show you that table that it adds to in a second, but I click the button, you see we've got some syncs going up here on the right, and then it took each of those items and added new rows into our backend Google Sheet with those quantities that I selected. So it's just kind of a really quick way to add multiple things along with a piece of information such as quantity. And the way that it's accomplishing this is actually an intermediary table. So if I could show you the Google Sheet really quick and find this table right here. So essentially, I have a copy of the item master table. So this is just the big grand list of the item master, which is where all of the quantities are stored. So this is our main kind of master list of items and how much is in inventory. And then I just kind of copied it as a template. And so I'm actually using this to select all of the items from this view and then add them into a transaction table, which kind of tracks all the transactions that are happening, which is this table. So what's happening whenever I hit this receive button is it adds the rows into this transaction table. And this transaction table has a quantity. These are the quantities that I selected. So I had 1, 1, 4, and 5. And they get added into this transaction table so that you can track changes in quantity up or down. And based on what happens here, the quantities in the item master, which is again that master sheet of how many quantities or how many of each item you have in stock, it gets updated accordingly based on what gets added to this table. And so that's kind of the guts of everything else that will happen in the app, is that rows will get added here, and then based off of what happens in this transaction table, kind of your easy quick read of how many things you have gets updated in this item master table. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of just insight into the behind the scenes. And then I'm going to keep moving along to the right. And on the build tab, it is the same exact setup as before. The only difference is that this list is a little bit different, and these are those composite items that I was talking about. And so the purpose of this view is that whenever I click this build button, it's actually increasing the quantity of those composite items and then subtracting the quantities in inventory of all the items that go into making it. And so there's kind of a string of behavior actions that are set up that just go into a list of what components are needed to make that item, and it looks at that list and it just subtracts one from every item that's inside that list. So also kind of cool. It's all automated behind the scenes. But again, that layout is the same, where you can select your item and select the quantity that you want to build, and it does all the math for you. The batch view is where you can throw items into batches. And so if I have added a bunch of items into inventory, I want to combine them into a batch, this is where I would do it. If you were on a mobile phone or a tablet, there would be a scan option here to scan a barcode. I'm going to select the location, and then through my little new button, I can add certain items into that batch and give it any info that I want about it. But this will allow me to combine previously added items into batch or new items that haven't ever been added before. If I wanted to do it through this view, I could. And then the last thing is just shipping out those items. And so this is removing them from inventory. I just choose the item that I am shipping out, or batch. You can also ship out batches, and then hit the button and it will remove each of those specified items from inventory. So that's kind of the really quick flyover walkthrough. I would love any questions about that, but really the crux, and I think the useful part that applies to a lot of different use cases, is this first view that I kind of focused on, where you have kind of a list of things that you know you need to work with on the left-hand side, and this layout over here where it just kind of puts them over here for you, and you can kind of see it in action as you go. And I found that was a really powerful tool and really helpful for this specific use case in an inventory app. But I think you could take it and apply it in a lot of different situations, and just speeds up your workflow like a million miles an hour. And essentially, I think I skipped this part, but this is also a different table, and it just has a bunch of columns that are labeled item 1, quantity 1. And it's just a bunch of columns. I did up to 30. And then I just have an action that runs on row select that adds a row to this table and fills in these columns like that. What is that type of view called? I see Brian asking in the chat. This one here on the right, selected items. Is that what you're asking about, Brian, or this whole view together? I can answer both. So this, I apologize, my headset just died for some reason, or disconnected. The whole thing together is called a dashboard view. And so each of these, these middle two views, the receive and the build view, they're both dashboard views. And so on the left, it's a table view that is grouped by item type. And so I can just click into all and see the individual items. And then on the right, it's a detail view with quick edits. So each of these columns has been set as a quick edit column in this selected items detail view. So I have two views in my dashboard, all items and selected items. And then I have two actions that are running on my selected items table that are doing the quantity addition and subtraction. So yeah, that's kind of what the whole thing is. If you're not familiar with dashboard views, they're really awesome, and they allow you to do things like this. And they're just a collection of multiple smaller views. And so you literally create the individual views, table view here, deck view here, calendar view, and then you create the dashboard view, and then you add each of the individual views into the dashboard, and then they show up like this. They are resizable. You can go into the individual views, and then you can also move them around. You know, if you have a whole bunch, you can organize them any way that you like, and it will save that selection to your device, I believe, the way that you have the dashboard set up. Are they side by side on a phone too? Good question. So dashboard views are a little bit less friendly on a mobile view, as you'll see here if you can. There's actually two options. You can add them as tabs. And so this is usually what I do, just a tab to switch between. If you guys can see that okay, I can make it a little bit bigger. If you deselect this option, so there's a little toggle on the UX view, called Use Tabs in Mobile View. If you toggle this off, then it stacks them. And so we have a split somewhere down the line right here where one view is on top of the other. And so it'll be that way in both tablet and mobile view, kind of depending on the size of the tablet. But if it's a big tablet, sometimes it actually shows you the full dashboard. So typically, dashboards work amazing if you have a view that is going to be primarily used on desktop. If it's kind of a mobile first user that's going to be using it, then usually there's a kind of a different way to set up your view. But I don't think the tabs are particularly bad. You just can't see both sides at the same time is kind of the drawback. Great questions. Really good questions.
Can I ask a question, CJ? On the left-hand side, you said you're drawing this data from an intermediary table. So
yes.
The left-hand side isn't sort of your actual inventory, it's a copy. And how does that get synced with the actual inventory over time? Are you actually maintaining both tables in your sheet or your database?
Yeah, really good question. So the item master table that is the only one that's actually tracking inventory quantities and location of each item. The copy of it that I'm using essentially as a template is really just to display the items and give me a place where I can actually, I may be mistaken. This actually looks like it's running off of the item master. So I think I'm actually using this in some underlying behavior actions to pull from. There is some oddity that I needed kind of a second copy of each item. But essentially all this is doing is displaying, and then I have it set to, I have this table view set to run a behavior on the selection of the row.
Okay.
So if I look at
that, you don't have to make a copy necessarily.
Correct. Not for this specific function. It is a view of that item master, unless I created virtual columns for some reason and was displaying it that way. But I don't think that is what I did. But
this is
yes,
really powerful. I could see using this for creating an invoice, for example, right? So that's my challenge. I've got a list of projects on the left, and my vendor needs to be able to pick and choose what do they want to put on their invoice. So I think this would work really well for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. Cool. Are there any other questions or anything anyone else would like to just look at in more detail before I hand it back over to Mr. James?
And it doesn't necessarily have to be about this app either. If you have questions generally about AppSheet, feel free to ask them now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, my name's Bybreen. And
Hi, Bybreen.
This is non-related to what you've just done here. But if I wanted to build out an email management aspect to my app, where would I begin? How could I do that?
Yeah, good question. You said email management?
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean?
Yeah, sorry. I hope I'm using the right phraseology. So
oh, you're great.
Imagine a customer, a client management app.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to have email as part of the app, as well as task management and client management. But just looking at the email segment, how would I get that into the app? Where would I begin? So let's say
So-
that, the group of us here, we wanted to email each other in relation to one particular item.
Mhm.
How could I start that?
So you're talking about kind of a client relation, a CRM type
Thank you.
application,
Yes, my brain just kind of went a bit dead. Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
and are you asking about the app kind of generating emails?
Oh, that's a
Uh,
good question. So it could be two-pronged. A, yes, generating email between all of us. And then secondly, let's say that obviously we already have a third-party email like Gmail or Outlook. How would I get data out of the emails that are in Outlook or Gmail, for example? And how would I pull those emails into the app that then allows us to continue communication around a particular
mhm.
subject?
Yeah. Okay. The first one, which is AppSheet generating emails, um, is the easy one of the two. And
Okay,
so
great.
there are workflows, or there are things in AppSheet called workflows and reports in the
Mm-hmm.
behavior tab, and options for both what workflows and reports can do is send an email. And so, what you want, is if you've got a CRM app, you're going to have information about your clients. You're going to have their email in there, and you're going to have the emails of your internal team, people using the app.
Exactly.
Um, and it's very easy to set up a workflow or report that sends data that you're working with in the app, sends information to one of those emails, right? You've got a column called client email, and you say, hey, take this email from this row and send an email to them, with this data. That's kind of a textbook, bread and butter function in AppSheet, and it does it really well. So I would say start with having good data on that one. Make sure you've got your client's emails in an email column, so it kind of helps you format it. Put in your users' emails, and then there should be a lot of documentation and a lot of resources around how to set up kind of a basic email workflow to send data that you're using in the app. And we have resources on our YouTube channel and on appsheettraining.com, one of our training websites, that could help you do all of that. The second one, which is integrating a kind of a third-party email platform with your AppSheet app,
Yeah.
is a whole different can of worms, because we're talking about um, kind of a connection that's not built into either platform.
Right.
And so I don't have a clear answer for you off the top of my head. It would be a fairly complex solution that would kind of have to be custom built per email platform, per app. Um, AppSheet does have an API that is available on Business Plan.
Right.
Yeah, Brian's suggesting Google Form or something like Zapier or IFTT.
Oh, right. Okay.
Um, and so there may be some options around using mail hooks through Zapier, and if you have a business subscription with AppSheet, then you can use their API. But for a non-business subscription, I think the options you'd be looking at is trying to get the data from your email into something like a Zapier workflow, where it will then just kind of save that data back to your Google Sheet or whatever your backend data source is. Um, and so that would kind of be where the realm that you were looking. I just don't know how um, you get the email data to something like Zapier unless you set up some sort of email forwarding rule and you hit Zapier with that email and it parses out your email data. That might be an option, but it's not something that I've tried. So that's why I'm like, I think it would work in theory, but you never know. But I think that's where I would start, is see if you can figure out a way to forward certain emails based on some rule to a Zapier workflow, and see if Zapier can catch that email and then parse out the body of it, and then put that information from the body of your email or attachments, whatever, and then save that back to a Google Sheet, or other database, and then it would appear in your AppSheet app at that point, once you've saved it to the back end. So it wouldn't be hitting the app directly necessarily, but you would just be kind of going through the back door of saving it to your database, and then you would be able to see it in your application and then work with it there.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. I'll start with your first suggestion, because that keeps it nice and simple, and I kind of play around with that. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Really good question. Sorry, I didn't have a 5-step plan to success. But those third-party integrations
really
can
helps.
be fun.
It really helps. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
CJ, I had a question about the actions on the detail view you have here, selected items.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm having difficulty getting those kinds of actions to appear in a form. And so what I'm looking for is a way for the user to start entering data and then be able to click an action that goes and gets a price, for example. Our prices are dynamically generated. Some things have a price that's been negotiated based on parts of the form that they filled out, and others don't. And so what I'm trying to do is build a way for the user to give me some information about what they're doing, try to go get a price. If there isn't one, they can enter one. If there is one, we want to pull that in and make it read only. Is that even possible in an AppSheet form?
So yes and no. There's not a way to create a button that will pop up inside your form. If you need a button, then it has to be like what I have set up here, a detail view with quick edits. And then you can have buttons all day long, both prominently up at the top like I have them, or you can have them display inline right on the column next to the column title. But you can set it up to where you have a field, so a column in your underlying data, that has essentially an app formula that when you start to create a new row, it will go and pull a value from somewhere else. So this would be the price that you're looking for. It will go and pull that value and populate that column of that new row with that value automatically. If there's not one, obviously it returns blank. And then additionally, if you want it to kind of stand out and not look like just kind of another field, you can make it a show type column, which is a special column type that's really useful in forms. And essentially you would give it the same expression in the content section of the show column, the same kind of expression that you would use in the app formula, but then you can customize how it looks. So it'll show up just as a piece of text in your form, or a header, a section header or a page header, and it will just pop differently. But that would be, if I understand what you're needing correctly, that would be my recommendation, is have a field that will go and look for that price value using an expression, and then pull it into the form if there is one, and it'll just populate if there's a price there, and then whoever's filling the form will see it, and if there's no price, then it'll be blank.
Yeah, I'm able to do that now, but the issue is that if it's blank, I'm not able to make it editable, right? It seems like it's either read only or it's editable. So maybe
Right.
the show column that you mentioned, maybe that would help to, because I'm trying to do two things, right? I'm trying to go get a price and see if there is one. And I'm also trying to control whether or not the user edits that field.
So you need it to be, sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
Okay.
So you need it to be editable if there's not a price. You want them to be able to enter the price.
Exactly. If there is no negotiated price, that means they can enter one. But if there is one, all bets are off. You got to take this price.
Yeah, totally. that's a common issue that I think we run into a lot. Yeah, unfortunately, you in certain circumstances you get either or, but your best bet then is an initial value. And so if at that creation of that record is kind of the only time you're concerned about running that calculation, then
Mhm.
take your expression, put it in the initial value instead of the at formula field. And then essentially what you get is, so the difference is an initial value just populates that field on the creation of the row, but it can be edited afterwards, right? It will only calculate that one time when the row is first added. An at formula will recalculate every time any part of that row is updated. Any column in that row is updated, that at formula is going to recalculate. So you can't modify fields that have at formulas in them because they're calculated. They're calculated fields. They're only going to be the result of that calculation. So you could take an expression that goes and checks for your price in the initial value, and it will go and check if there is one. It puts it in the initial value. If not, it'll return blank. And then what I would try, and I believe this should work for you, is in the the editable if field. So there's an edit
Mhm.
toggle. Go into the expression part of that and say, hey, this is editable if it's blank. If it's not blank, right, if the initial value returns something, then make it not editable, right? So if there is a price in your other list over here, it'll put that in there. It won't be editable. If there's not one, then it'll be blank, and the edit if will pass, and then they will be able to enter something. And then once they enter something, though, then it's not editable anymore. So you need to keep that in mind.
Okay, so in the initial value, I do want to enable the user to select in that form the elements that will determine the price. And so if the initial value is only created on the, when the row is created, I guess, does the user have to save before I can get that initial value back? In other words, they have 3 items on the form that they need to fill out. And once they fill those out, then I need to go get a price.
Mhm.
So would that initial
Luckily,
value do that, or?
yeah. So luckily, AppSheet is pretty smart, and the initial value will recalculate,
Oh, good.
taking into account each new piece of the form that you're adding.
Excellent.
So if there is things changing, you can fill out your whole form, and that initial value will update, so long as you have the form open. So that form open is kind of this like holding period where everything is still flexible and waiting for all the inputs.
Gotcha.
And then once you save it, then it's going to calculate and save to the database exactly what it was. But inside that form, you can fill out fields, and it will update as you go. You do this for concatenation formulas a lot when we're concatenating several fields.
Yeah.
When you open the form, it'll be one thing or nothing, and then as you add the things above it, you see it fill in as you go.
Oh, that's so helpful. I've been trying to use a virtual column. I've been trying to use the app formula in the field. Wasn't getting anywhere. I didn't think to use the initial value. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Try that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. This is what we love to do. We love to help as best we can, and we spend hundreds of hours in this platform on our computers, and so like, man, we gotta make it worth it. We gotta get stuff out there and connect with people, and share the cool things that we're excited about, that we're doing and that we've done. So glad to be of service.
Are these webinars every week? This is my first time attending.
Yes, ma'am. So we try to have them every week, same time. We may try to bump it up to 2 times a week, but that is up to Mr. Stefan, who is president of Crew Tech. So he's trying to bump it up because we want to make our resources available to you guys as much as possible. But we just don't have those resources right now to be able to make that happen. Would anybody like to ask any other questions?
Looks like we got a question in the
Oh,
chat.
nice.
I can't really use a credit card working for local government municipality. Are you able to take purchase orders with checks? Are you asking about AppSheet billing, or are you asking about crew services billing? Both. Okay. So crew can definitely work with you and take checks. And we do most of our invoices through QuickBooks, but we have a lot of different clients in a lot of different situations, and so I know that there are multiple clients that pay us via check. So that's great. Obviously, the instant online is preferable, but we're here for our clients first and foremost. So we'll definitely work with you. As far as AppSheet goes, I don't think that you have the option to pay with a money order or a check or anything like that. And that would be something I would clarify with AppSheet proper. Send an email to support@appsheet.com or connect with them on their website. But I think their only kind of payment option is setting up a card. Maybe they may support like ACH, like a bank account, on their website. But I'm not 100% certain on that one. Good questions, Brian. Thank you.
Alrighty, cool. Well, I'm gonna take back over CJ just for our last slide.
You should. Okay, cool.
Last slide, just brief synopsis of who we are, what we're doing, what we're trying to do for you guys. You can see at the top we have our link, and like we just told Miss Angela, we'll be doing this every week at 11 o'clock Central Time on Thursdays every week. We're going to try to mix it up. We're going to try to have different demos for you guys. We're going to try to highlight special features, show you guys some really cool things that you can do with AppSheet every week. And we're going to try to make it as different and as informative as possible. But we have Crew Tech, we're AppSheetTraining.com, that's us. If you guys are looking for some training programs to get more into AppSheet, we do have self-paced training, we do have enterprise training. I can personally vouch for these programs. While I was training, these are the things that I used in order to get familiar with AppSheet, because I knew nothing about coding. I knew nothing about AppSheet at all. And now look at me, I'm hosting a webinar. It really is really beneficial, and it's really easy to get into. And then if you're actually looking for some one-on-one coaching, we're also available for that. I put my email down here at the bottom. You guys are feel free to email me anytime. I may not check it if it's early in the morning, but as soon as I see it, I will get back to you and be able to answer any questions that you may have forgotten about, or if you needed to touch base and ask about one-on-one coaching, or even if you were interested in us, you got tired of trying to do it and you want us to build an app for you, we'd love to do that for you. That's what our purpose is. Our purpose is is to help you guys. But thank you guys so much for being here, and that is going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.